bluntly and clearly inform the investment blueprint. I just have a few submissions and questions. One, when you're talking about the risks, you did not, I didn't clearly see the bit of the currency risk, given the fact that most of the investment that is coming from external donors or development partners is coming through either USD or euros, and yet most of the revenues that are being generated out of this is in EGX, and there's a bit of depreciation when it comes to the revenue, when it comes to the currency, the Ugandan currency. So how do we address the issue of, I hope that the blueprint also addresses the issue of currency risk for foreign investors, and also maybe if you could highlight more on it. Then secondly is in the whole blueprint, and I think based on the conversations that have been going on the past few weeks, is on the issue of inclusive, responsive financing mechanisms, where we address, where we intentionally address gender and youth responsive financing mechanisms, and how these mechanisms explore ownership thresholds and mechanisms for benefit sharing. Then thirdly, I think thirdly is on investment readiness. I believe, as Angela was started her introduction, I was very enthusiastic to hear about something to do with investment readiness for these projects, and I will relate this to something real quick, which is the RISE program by UDB. I don't know if that is something that has been addressed, but how do we also tap into such initiatives as they're leveraging technology and specifically AI to align the bankability of projects in various sectors? And one of the key sectors or missions that they are looking at is the agri-food sector, and to see how best we can get various bankable projects and align them with different investment needs. Then finally is on the green bonds. I think that is one word that came out of every slide during the presentation. So for the green bonds, I believe the Capital Markets Authority regulations of 2023 do speak largely about the green bonds. But what is the composition of the nexus within these regulations? Do they address the regulations? And then also still the same thing in regards to the national green taxonomy. Then also maybe something that we can look at, given the fact that the country, I beg to be corrected by some of the financiers in the room, but I believe that the first, we haven't yet issued a public or legit corporate green bond offering. So I think we could look out for some of these and see how they will inform markets, the market's real signal of maturity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, the presenter. And yeah, that was a comprehensive review. And I think the fact that this is a presentation also tells us there is a lot of detail that we are not exposed to at the moment, but we shall give our comments. And yes, the first comment was mentioned by the earlier speaker, where we need an alignment to the NDP 4. Yes, NDP 3 was talking about industrialization, but we need to know how much of it is being spoken about in the NDP 4, such that we make appropriate alignment. Also, Uganda's agriculture landscape, the 70% of the people involved in it, we can't have these conversations without reflecting much on the status of smallholder farmers. Most of these farmers, most of these people, that especially us from the agriculture sector, we work with our smallholder farmers, and the financing that we are talking about should look at how it speaks to these categories of people. Before my current role, I was working with a financial institution, and I was in charge of assessing some of these agricultural products. And I left at a time when we had become so adapted that we would look at in terms of, if of course that's from our agriculture point of view, what are your production intent, what are your targeted productivity, I mean in terms of the output, the quantities, and in terms of amount. And we are looking at extending some kinds of months of grace to suit your productivity. So in this kind of blueprint, I'm looking at how are the financial institutions, the current status, how are they responding to these elements, to these aspects in agriculture. And we cannot move away from doing a lot of research or a lot of engagement with the microfinance institutions, because they are the ones working with farmers, and they are the ones ready to work with farmers or working with farmers. And it's so unfortunate that their rates are high. So I think our engagement should also be focused on how do we engage more of these people. They are the ones working with farmers. And as we are looking at the listing or looking at the financing options, I was about the current trends in Uganda, where he mentioned about the blended financing also coming up, and I wanted to hear about something like the SACCOs, the SACCOs, the VSLAs. We've seen where these people have been supported to generate their own monies to use in terms of financing. Generating their own monies does not necessarily mean that farmer X is the one raising money to buy the equipment or whatever technology they need, but the collective capacities of the members within a group. So I think we should also think about these kinds of how do we engage them to come up with viable solutions that can support themselves, to finance themselves. Yes, we talked about these very good things of green bonds, carbon credits. Some of these things, I don't understand them. I mean, I feel I'm much more privileged than some of these farmers. So when we are talking about how to bridge the gaps of financing, especially in the Ugandan perspective, from the smallholder perspective, we need to contextualize the options. We need to look at how this the most grassroots farmer can be facilitated to also get away of getting these technologies. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I wanted to speak after Mark, but unfortunately, yeah. So thank you so much, Natif, for this brilliant presentation. Really, mine was just a comment and just something for us to reflect on, really. And it was one of us talking about and reflecting on who are these financiers with the money to give the beneficiaries. visit the banks. I was recently with some entrepreneurs, agroecological entrepreneurs, and they were telling me, Hadija, for us when you bring the banks, we sometimes don't even benefit so much, you know. So, like Pelham usually organizes a market systems expo where we bring the different banks and they interact with the entrepreneurs. But they felt it's not enough. The banks will come and talk and they will not pick out what they really want. So what I want us to reflect on is who are those people with the money? In Uganda, it's Banya Babaina Centers of You know, so who are they? You know, we need to map them. I'm seeing Abby here. What are those projects that are there? Private sector foundation, the accelerator programs that are coming on board. Those people who have our money. Let us map them. But also on the other side, the beneficiaries, the farmers we are talking about, the RAPUR project beneficiaries, but also others. We need to assess their capacity to take up what the financials have. Are they in the best position to take them up? Do they have the requirements, the list required? Are they ready to take them up? So I think this is coming up at a very good time, and I think with this, with a study that will be conducted with this, it will really support to close out this gap, because you can clearly see there is a gap. Information, there's too much, but if we can assess the capacity and the preparedness of the beneficiaries, plus also mapping the financials and what is that they have in package, I think we'll be good to go. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much. To Greek, well done. Just to add, somewhere on the slide of de-risking and risk profiling, there was something that I didn't see, and I believe it is also something that needs to be part. It is on poor quality and standards. Because for us at Pelham Uganda, I believe all of us who work with farmers, we really see households struggling with the cost of poor quality technologies when it comes to trying to access most of these pure technologies, for example, solar solution technologies that farmers think they propel or they aid their production, but to end up disappointed with poor quality. In other words, we still have a gap on sustainability and affordability of these technologies. You find that they are not affordable. Farmers strive to access one or two, and they end up not being sustainable in the long run. So can we have something around there? Because I believe we all aim to finance, to put money into something that can really sustain farmers' production. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Douglas, for that presentation, and it was really very detailed. From the detailed presentation, from my point of view, was that we all appreciate that food is very important for everyone, irrespective of our titles, irrespective of our qualifications, irrespective of our different entities. Everyone needs food. And for the fact that everyone needs food, we need to respect food and the producers of food. but you find that on the radar, that producer of food is the least respected and is the least earner of his or her efforts. I'm so glad that the efforts are being put to be able to enable this farmer, because we all appreciate that our farmers are at that local level that they cannot afford the modern methods of farming. And the finances, like every previous speakers have indicated, they are not able to meet these the requirements of accessing the required funds to modernize and produce largely for what we intend to achieve. Now, from my end, first of all, we are making so many boardroom discussions, but in our plan, how do we ensure that that person has got this very knowledge that we are discussing here? Because he or she is the implementer of what we want to achieve. We are saying that we are aiming at productivity. I saw the framework that indicated aiming at productivity. But after productivity, what next? Do we have market for all this productivity? Because some projects have been implemented in some areas, and you'll find that in a certain area, people are producing largely. There you've solved the problem of hunger, but people remain poor. There's a lot of production, but there is no improvement on off the shelf. And yet we know that our products are perishable. So now when renewable energy comes in, I come from the mini-grid space, and I like to deal with the local farmers because those are my end user consumers. At the end of the day, the local farmer where I have not put a mini-grid or where power is not reaching, even if it is UADCL, you find that where they are farming, they would need independent irrigation facilities. But how many of our 70% farmers can afford the irrigation facilities? And so when in our next step we are talking about mobilization of investors. How are we attracting the investors to be able to support these farmers to acquire these modern methods of farming and then ensure that they can be able to recoup the investment? We need to look into that. How we are going to convince these partners that we can work together and they can be able to see that in the next 5-10 years we can be able to recoup this investment. The financials, previous speakers have talked about it, but you find that we have tried to engage some of the finance institutions. And you find that by the nature of the finance institutions, they are always risk averse. And these risks are not actually helping our farmers. And you find the farmers shying away from actually accessing this or saying that we can be able to acquire this loan to improve our productivity. So like the previous speaker indicated, how are we going to support to ensure that these microfinance institutions comes back to the policy level, because the MFIs are here, but the lending rate with the MFIs is even higher than the banks, and yet the banks are not need the collateral that the farmers do not have, and especially in areas where areas where land is communally owned, you find that it is difficult to offer collateral in terms of land. So with this, also before I conclude with this, I also think that capacity building is very important for the end users, and it does not only end at production but also at making them sustainable. After producing, can I be able to market my products and then continuously produce year in, year out when I'm benefiting? Can we get better prices for the farmers so that they can be encouraged to continuously produce for us, because we all depend on food. Thank you very much. Thank you, the presenter. I'm called Mary Lynn Kakale. I work with Nogam. Sorry, I came in late. I hadn't introduced myself. But my question is on the Uganda's National Financial Inclusion Strategy. How has this been informed by this strategy, and how has it been aligned to this strategy, which is 2023-2028? I saw that in the next steps we are talking of having policy engagements. I think before we go that far, we need to align this desk review to this strategy so that we don't talk about things that have already been planned for. Then about the fragmented financing landscape, I was in one meeting where we had so many financial institutions talking to different groups of farmers, but everyone was marketing what they are providing. And these women are confused. So I think we need to consolidate these services so that the women know where to go. If they want for the group, they know where to go. If they want for individuals, they know where to go, instead of having them scattered. Then for the next steps, I think we can include it as we need a lot of financial literacy to avoid misuse and awareness creation of the different technologies so that people get what they are sure of, that it works. So there is a need for a lot of awareness creation and financial literacy as the next step. Then also the other one is we are talking about this review, and we are saying it is an investment blueprint. We need to, someone asked, is it a qualitative or quantitative? We need to ask the right people, like the cooperatives, the farmers, why are they tapping on these services? What is stopping them? Their challenges, all that information is very good for this blueprint. We cannot miss that one out. We need to reach out. Though it's a desk review, we need to get these voices from the right people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the presentation. I'm going to emphasize just a few things that have been already talked about, using basically what is on ground. As previously introduced, I work with the Equitable, and Equitable is implementing the Electric Success Scale-up project. Most of the, basically, we are implementing a blended financing model where we have concessional loans to financial institutions, and our financial institutions also go down to microfinance institutions and stuff. We believe those are the ones that can drive impact to the local communities. Because in most cases, we have always given out money to big financial institutions, and the money does not move because they look for high ticket size, but the end user who needs just a small micro loan, and when it's not going to be provided as one of the financing gap, but we try to address that in that way. Then we also have reserve-based financing, or RBFs, where we partner with over 90 companies to deliver these technologies to the end users, and we have subsidized the technologies for productive use of energy technologies. We subsidize them to 60%. And we also have partial credit guarantees to de-risk, especially financial institutions, and over the portfolio at times. Then we also have technology risk guarantees. We also have supplier incentives. So all these instruments are in place, but again, the uptake at times doesn't move. So for me, it speaks back to you know, there is a component that Dr. Mary Susan usually hates, knowledge management. That under that component, there are a lot of things that we have not managed to do. So, for example, information dissemination. So now I am speaking. Some of you may be hearing this for the first time, but we have been implementing for the last 3 years. And that's why, in most cases, there are very good programs. You hear there are culture, credit facility. You hear about, I know, this PAL Bank or Post Bank also has other programs in that line, but the information does not come out very well. So I think in this blueprint we need to really emphasize, we need to really analyze why that information is not moving out. Then there are also issues of capacity gaps. Again, like you talked about, so these facilities are available, but financial institutions may fail even to extend these facilities to end users because of you know, here lending issues, looking for a lot of collateral. They fail to design how they can lend out to end users up there, and they remain on this collateral. We need a house, we need land, we need what, but there are other models that the financial institutions can structure. Recently, I got a customer who had received a milling machine, 185 million through nuts, and this machine has been on the shelves for 3 years because they failed to get 4 million as a group to do a three-phase connection and connect to the. So when the financial institutions go there, because the big financial institutions that have money, they say, hey, we need collateral. Do you have title land? Do you have what? And the business itself can really be able to go back and so on and so forth. So the issue of information, the issue of awareness creation, all these issues, I think, play a material role in limiting these technologies from penetrating deep down. Even when financing is there, because we shall look at financing gap as financing as a gap, but even the financing can be available. You have the subsidies and so on, and then people are not getting these technologies down the road, and they are not adapting to them. So it's the knowledge management, and under that is capacity building, it's awareness, information dissemination, and it is really, really engaging up to the last mile. I submit.
Yeah, so I realize that we may not be able to go back all the way, so let me make a few more submissions that also. It's interesting that we've noted some trends. We say Kenya going faster than all of us. Could it be because of large-scale farming? Because for them, they really do mostly in industry, if I can call it that way, or commercial. Rwanda, is it because of the policies? The Eastern, is it because of the terrain, proximity to Kenya, energy distribution? The West, is it because of the intense farming, and therefore there is observation, strong value chains? These are things we need to think about. Now, in terms of national frameworks, there is the new framework, the tenfold growth. Tenfold growth needs to come out strongly. Agro-processing is one of the focus areas, the ATMs. Tourism, I don't know whether when we then have regenerative agriculture, you can have agro-tourism. Of course, minerals, I don't know how that comes up, but then also science and technology. So in terms of innovation, innovating processes or technologies that are applicable, perhaps that would also be there, and it will be really strong for support. Now, we are talking about scaling, and I like the previous speaker talked about the fact that there are actually programs and frameworks, the SCF for instance, that's not really being consumed, and even green finance in general. And we have consistently said as the Institute will do two things, promoting or accelerating inclusion and professionalism. So we have challenges on the professional side, the supplier side, talking about capacity, but we also have issues on the demand side, like everybody has talked about. Okay, sorry, I'll go back a little bit. In terms of frameworks, also to just let you know that ESG, we have now an ESG framework for the bankers. And it's going to be an obligation for implementation going forward. The Bank of Uganda will be tracking and monitoring how banks are streamlining or mainstreaming sustainability and ESG. So the issue of not being able to lend and know to these initiatives and this direction will probably reduce over the time. So you also need to be, acceptance is going to be much higher, and capacity building is core to that as well. So going back to the demand and supply side, we need to also, as you do this, we need to think about, as you assess why is it happening in some places and not others, let's think about some models. The diffusion of innovation model. We might be thinking that, okay, maybe it's just delaying, but it will happen. But we want to accelerate it because the conditions are here. So if you know that only 3.5 are adopters or 2.5 are adopters, you're going to have the innovators and the adopters and all that. Put that into perspective and see, okay, if we want to accelerate it in Eastern, in Central, in whatever, that model works. And in adoption, you have issues that are critical, that are clear, functions that you take, and now adoption is going to be both for the suppliers and the demand side, the relative advantage. People need to know, the farmer needs to know what's the relative advantage of the degree to which the innovation can see, is it a better idea, is it better something for me? So for the supplier and the farmer, compatibility. How is it consistent with my needs? So even the banks, well, maybe there are some things that are not compatible for them. So then who do you focus on? But also for the demand side, what would work for me? People have talked about smallholder farmers. What would work for smallholder farmer? What would work for mid range? And what would work for complexity? How easy is it? Both, even again, the program. So you might find that for microfinance institutions, you might come up with a model, and it's just too complex. They don't even have the system to put all these, variables in their system. So how complex is it? It should be simple, both for the banker and for the farmer. Triability. Can I try it? Is it easy to try? Because, if you look at the adoption now in terms of the marketing side, people become aware, they try, they adopt, and they advocate. But if I can't even touch, somebody talked about it, if the systems are very expensive, I can't even try for me to get a proof of concept. So even that needs to be. And lastly, observability. So if I'm on the red, if I'm on the outside, I should be able to observe and see. And so we must also be thinking about demonstration farms or demonstration places. And then ask ourselves if that demonstration place is in place, whatever, for lack of a better word. Then how will innovation, how will that diffusion of innovation happen? And then we talked about groups in terms of de-risking. And I had something like lending to groups in a similar value chain. That might also be difficult. Since we are talking about regenerative agriculture, and you're talking about cash flow, risks. How about you consider models such as you have farmers but have mixed cropping? Like there is coffee, there is maize, there is beans, there is. If these people are together, can they, if they are buying collectively, can some cash flows come earlier? So timing of cash flows. So you may not be able to just have one value chain because then you're also setting yourself up for failure. How do we make it, like it's both regenerative but also helping the financing side? So mixed farming and matching with cash flows. Mobility, having some technologies that are mobile. So if we are in a group and I observe it's working here, what happens then? Can it come from one farm to the next and all that? And then in terms of demonstrations, in terms of getting the groups, because there are also the fact that some of the things the banks look at are things like character, at least for financing. There are 5 critical areas. Character. The character is about whether you are able to you have the ability and the willingness to pay back. Now, many times, for you who has a record, borrowing record, it's easy. These people don't have a borrowing record. So what can be taken as character? Is it the group, like you talked about? Is it the group? Is it capacity? What capital do you have? And also, your debt to income ratio. You already have debt. Do they have debt? Do they even know how to borrow? Many of them will not even touch borrowing. So those things need to be capital. What assets do you already have? That was another critical example. You have a machine that is 185 million, you need 4 million, and so now that's on the other side. Because definitely somebody has the capital to borrow, because you can decide to whatever and then of course collateral we talked about, and the overall condition. So when we are thinking about all these things, if we now go to groups, for instance, VSLs, circles, and we have a model where we are saying circles learning from circles. So if it may be a fully set demonstration farm, or it may be one circle that's doing so well, how do then other circles learn from that? So it's a mix of different, and that's why I was asking, is it qualitative, is it quantitative? All these things that when put together could help to accelerate whatever we're trying to do.
Thank you. So, thank you for that round of incredible questions and supplementary feedback. I believe most of it has actually been supplementary feedback. We had one last presentation to make, and that is specifically focusing on the blueprint, which will help answer some of the questions that were raised. Standards, currency risk, is it a quantitative or qualitative model? What does it look like? All that. So allow me to dive into it. And for the questions that are not answered by this presentation, we have captured them. And the reason we have brought you here at the beginning and not at the end, so that now, as my colleague Douglas mentioned, stakeholder consultation. When we come for stakeholder consultation, we shall now know that we need to go to IBFS to understand all of these models that we have mentioned. So that feedback has been captured, but really now we wanted to also get that feedback to you. So in essence, we are achieving one of the objectives of the workshop, to get that feedback and get that opinion that is across the board. So the blueprint follows the desk study. At this stage, it was more of coming up with the framework before it is filled, before it is populated. Can they come up with the framework that stakeholders can also look at and see what kind of blueprint we are talking about? Are there any missing parts that are crucial to this topic or this conversation we are leading that need to be added to the blueprint? So the challenge has already been mentioned, fragmented financing, and also we have had across the board that how do we ensure that we transition these boardroom discussions to the last mile adopter, that is the end user. Yeah? So we want the purpose of this blueprint is to ensure that finance reaches the final beneficiary, and that is the smallholder farmer. Whether it reaches them in a group or individually, as long as it has reached that final consumer. So its purpose is to align fiscal policy, financial instruments, and stakeholder incentives all across the board. That's why we first did a desk review to understand what are some of those existing fiscal policies, incentives, stakeholder incentives, and financial instruments that are already on the market that this blueprint can learn from. This also helps to inform best practices that should be informed by the blueprint. So the objective is that once it's developed, we want to ensure it is stakeholder validated, it is data driven, and identifies the key gaps and incentives that can be actionable by all the stakeholders. This is government, this is the private partners, development partners, financial institutions, all of them. We want you to participate in the development of this blueprint so that at the end we don't fall victims, or it does not fall victims to the 5 stages that were mentioned. It is too complex for triability. We don't want it to fall victim to those stages. Specific objectives of this, the deeper objectives, I want to diagnose key financial gaps, barriers prohibiting financial access for farmers, validate at least 3 scalable business models. Business models are already existing. Now, we want to understand what are some of the bottlenecks that are failing them, and how can those bottlenecks be addressed to ensure that the last mile beneficiary finally benefits when they purchase the system. They don't fail to pay back. Develop an incentive and de-risking framework, and also we want to use this blueprint to together or collectively mobilize capital for the RA Pure Texas. So RA, someone was telling me at the beginning that when they received the invitation, there were too many terminologies. They were reading rapture. So when I say RA Pure, I hope I do not confuse some people in the audience. So that is mainly, you can think of the agriculture and energy nexus. So the framework, for now, I'm saying for now because this is a consultation. For now, we are looking at 4 parts of it, so that will constitute or make up the framework. We have governance and enablers. Under governance and enablers, we are looking at policy and standards, something that was raised for the audience. How do we ensure that the technologies adhere to the best standards that are available in the market? Data architecture and market intelligence, how do we consistently gather market information that can inform decision making? Now we have the financial part, called the finance stack. Here we're looking at the different, blended finance, different incentives that can be adopted by this blueprint. And this is from also best practices and observations, either from stakeholders or current ongoing initiatives, such as the RBFs, which we have noted to have key observable practices under there. Aggregation and pipeline facilities. So this talks on we have talked of the group models. How best can we aggregate users? How can we bring them together? One, to also address the challenge of the ticket sizes. Individually, the person might not meet the required ticket sizes, but together, collectively, they could meet that ticket sizes. And also building a pipeline facility. There are many stakeholders here. Mogamu, Pela, have SMEs that are looking for financing. How do we build that pipeline of bankable proposals that can be financed? Local currency refinance under here, we also observed some of the concern that has already been raised across the room. Agriculture credit facility, it is not the financing, all the resources underneath are not well absorbed. So how do we bring it in also to handle the currency risk that one of the colleagues mentioned? Since for it mobilizes in UGX. Mobilizes in UGX. How do we tap into that to ensure that it also handles that currency risk that was mentioned. Cross-cutting systems, that would be another component of it, looking at things like eligibility and quality assurance. How do we qualify, pre-qualify maybe the financiers, the suppliers? How do we pre-qualify the end users as well that are going to benefit from this? And then verification, how do we track impact matrices, adoption matrices for these technologies that we are pushing, all these practices, both energy and agriculture practices that are being financed. Because without M&E, we shall not improve the model. Gender equity and social inclusion, we want it to be from the get-go. So it's a key component. It's not something that will come. If you don't plan for something, how do you expect to what? To harvest that parable of the workers. Yes, reap what you sow. So we have to sort Jesse into this framework. Now the last stage is how do we implement? We have looked at 3 gates at least. I think there are 4 gates that at least will help us implement. Under governance and enablers, government enablers, so a key was that before for PURE to scale, at least interministerial committees need to be constituted. Yeah? Interministerial committees need to be constituted. So energy, agriculture, trade, finance, and water. And this is already underway because NREP has already begun on this. NREP is the National Renewable Energy Platform. So they have already begun this conversation. I think terms of reference have already been released, and they are to start. I believe either this quarter or early in the next quarter. The working committees of the ministries. Market building blocks, crucial to that is standards where we see Ministry of Trade also, which houses UNBS, still comes in here. Capacity building, initially I was thinking that only the financiers need capacity building to absorb energy, but through the discussion now you see I've adopted them. There are many people who need capacity building. So mapping who needs capacity building for this project to work. Market data and policy alignment. So data architecture and market intelligence, of course, having a common, this is mainly having a common dictionary of defined terms that we are going to use in these loan portfolios that we develop. So how do we define this that are well understood by all the players across the board? The financiers and the energy players need to be on the same level of understanding. So allow me to rush through it, just to eat up time. In finance, we are looking at all the financing models or approaches supporting the aggregation model. So after aggregating, how now do we ensure that financing is directed towards these identified bank opportunities? What kind of incentive can we design for the financiers to ensure that if we there's a has to be there, how have they met that Jesse component? Maybe if they have lent to a pure project, yeah, there's an additional incentive if that the constitution of that pure project has Jesse component involved. Yeah? So how do we design these incentives to ensure that the financiers, not only Jesse but also we're looking at last mile access. Yeah? How do we ensure that the lending does not stop in central, just here where they reach? How do we ensure that we reach someone in the last corner of Uganda in either northeastern or northwestern, yeah, or south investor. Refinance, here is looking at how do we work with the existing local initiatives, championed by the government, local development banks, agriculture credit facility, to do some backstopping for the financiers, do some risk sharing for the financiers, handle that part aspect of currency risk that was mentioned. So under aggregation is mainly to pull many small assets this into investable portfolios. So developing standard templates, term sheets, offtake letters, service level agreements, and roles, also defining roles, plus a country action plan for aggregation readiness. The aggregation readiness, I think this was a key recommendation from one of the studies conducted by the Energy for the Future. That will get the right authors. RBF window for RAPO assets, pay post verification incentives. As we have seen in many RBF projects, a key practice has been on the independent verification of the assets that have been financed. So if you're saying you've deployed a solar pump, someone independent has to go and verify that truly that pump has been what? Deployed. And check also who have you deployed it to? Yeah? Where have you deployed it to? Yeah? So this verification component is one of the, we're looking at adopting best practices among some of the already existing models to finance, to accelerate financing. Lender incentives, talked about it. Originate, how do we incentivize financiers to originate in underserved segments? Yeah? Also improve tenor or lending tenors or prices. So someone mentioned something of if the equipment really it is going to, maybe it needs some good grace period to start generating income and get the banker or the financier. It demands the next month. Yeah? How do we incentivize the financiers to go beyond that and design flexible tenures to meet the end user? Here, we're looking at how can we design incentive rate cards with the financiers, and also broad best practices from Marceli Africa's evidence on how incentives nudge banks down market and toward first-time borrowers. So the reason also we called some partners in the room like ABI, we've been implementing many of these, and we shall be engaging to see what are some of those working things. Fred mentioned of the electricity access scale-up project, which they have been implementing for 3 years. Already there are some best practices that can be adopted, and what we ensure that these are captured even after ESP closes. How do we ensure that knowledge remains behind and is adopted by all the participating financial institutions, sector providers, so local currency refinance, specifically to this, many of us, actually not many of us, very few people know about what? Agriculture credit facility. The agriculture credit facility, how do we bring it to the limelight and ensure that it does helps push this agenda of financing for the sector? Because we know it is targeting the smallholder farmers. It's targeting farmers, okay. Farmers big and small. How much is it reaching them? So now they said the purpose here is how do we work with this to ensure that the last mile beneficiary benefits from the already pooled financing, such that people can stop asking who's that has our money. I know your incentives are free. So the interlinkage is that once portfolios are aggregated, this feed into the RBFs, they help to design the RBFs, lender incentives and refinance local currency. will refinance. Under cross-cutting systems also had elaborated there. So under this also eligibility, quality and customer protection, this is crucial. So you see that it still links to governance and enablers. We are talking about standards. So here we are looking at describe minimum technical specifications. So before we qualify the pure suppliers or the RA suppliers, what are those minimum performance technical specifications? And I know Pelam and Mogamo also play a key role on standardization for organic products in the agriculture sector. So how do we define all these minimum technical specifications before they participate in these financing mechanisms that have been designed? Then warranties and service level agreements are also crucial under this part. In RBF, the verification SOPs define the ex-ante what counts as verified assets, sampling protocols, documentation, and audit rights. RBFs have been ongoing for a very long time. Yeah? In Uganda, you can count over 10 years for RBFs, but now, how do we document what worked and what didn't work under these RBFs? Behavior change, M&E, track lender reach, improve new segments, use annual learning reports to recalibrate incentive rates. So we're looking at something that is a living model which learns and recalibrates. Of course, public dashboards as well, gender equity and social inclusion, higher incentive tiers for loans to women-led enterprises or first-time borrowers. Yeah? So leave no one behind. Inclusive eligibility, lighter collateral options for cooperatives and women groups. So to align with some responsible market practices highlighted by Gogla in the Pure Working Handbook, the Pure Handbook. So how do we design eligibility criteria such that it is inclusive? And the issue of collateral, how can we work around that? So in implementation, this is under at least 4 gates: diagnose, pilot, validate, scale. Gate 1 in market diagnosis. So here we are looking at completing interministerial Pure task force, not us but NREP. As we mentioned, the power for food is a partnership. So once NREP does something, it feeds into here. Once NREP does something, it feeds into the next partner's implementation. Verified minimum technical specifications, sitting down with the different partners. Actually, in this blueprint, we shall be working also closely with agriculture partners. So how do we sit down together, define these minimum technical specifications? First of all, develop the scope of what we are looking at in terms of agriculture and energy nexus, and then design the minimum performance technical specifications. Have a common data dictionary with key performance indicators, definitions, uptake, performance, portfolio at risk within 30 days. Something I also learned while doing this work. This stuff, which could be priced relative to the financiers. Payback, return on investment, kilowatt hours, PTL and inclusion. Baselines initiated using agreed tools and samples. Aggregation readiness, standard data room index, term sheet shells, and document templates. Aggregation has been something that really was highly recommended by, actually that was a UNDP funded study that really recommended how can countries be, Pure portfolios be aggregated to increase ticket sizes, to overcome that challenge of ticket sizes. In Gate 2, pilot something, so pre-qualification notice published. So we want to mention that also here, together with a partner called the World Resources Institute, we wanted to pilot at least an incentive for this of up to $20,000 US to tap into to finance productive uses of renewable energy in agriculture. So here, this pilot will be crucial in getting data. Those participating financial institutions are looking at this to meet maximum 2 financing financial institutions, and these the lower ones. So as we work with them to implement this pilot, how does the data collected feed into the blueprint? The incentives, the JC metrics that were designed, the verification protocols, pre-qualification, the aggregation work, etc. Or farmer readiness, all those. How do they fit into informing the final blueprint? Gate 3 is validation. Of course, by then we have to demonstrate uptake in targeting segments. So now Gate 3, this is looking into next year. Gate 1 and 2 are looking at starting some of that, the pilot and the trainings this year. We shall be starting specifically for financiers. That is UIDA faces in the room. And to work with closely to see how these financiers can design relevant curriculum for onboarding or capacitating the financiers. But also other partners like PELAM, Mogamo, and AXA, how do we design now curricula for the end users? Both parties need to come when they have gone through their courses such that we are on the same page. So by Gate 3, we want to be reporting on some of these uptake metrics from the pilot, and what are some of the learnings from there. Also, the report may be on how ongoing projects have adopted recommendations from this. Sensitivity checks on pilot cohorts, confirm viability, lessons captured on tenure grace period, pricing, and working capital. And of course, routine reviews. Scaling, once this is validated next year, as we come back and agree that some of these best practices that we can adopt, for now, is can we now use it with the financiers in the room, in the country, outside? Can we use this blueprint to mobilize financing for the agri-energy sector? Yeah? And also we want, together with the different partners, we should have by then over 50 bankable RAP which we shall have verified with you during the course of this year and early next year. So after capacitating the financial institutions, the farmers, how do we now the agri-SMEs under PELAM, Mogamo, and AXA, the profiles developed by this investment ready? And how can these now champion the blueprint? Can they be the stepping stone that catapult the blueprint? National launch, of course, then we will also handle be launching at that point. So yes, those are essentially the next steps which I've already mentioned. Capacity building sessions, launch of the LFI pilot, which for the LFI local financial institution pilot, we shall launch, this will be through an expression of interest, issued to financial institutions, especially the microfinancial institutions and the circles, to see if they would like to participate in this pilot. And then the capacity building sessions, on our side, we shall be working with the financial institutions and also working closely with PELAM and the GAMO and AXA to see how the end users can also simultaneous curricula to capacitate both segments of the sector. Data collection and aggregation. Also, how do we design data collection tools that can inform the development of the blueprint? Yes, so I believe that helped answer some of the questions. Mark, you're not around, but your question was answered. I have witnesses, risk, currency risk. Yes, so, but still welcome feedback on this. The question was not still have, you have 15 minutes, so you can use 5 minutes, any quick crossfire across the room to take some observations on the blueprint framework. But we're also going to share it with you. If you feel you can have more feedback, we shall share it via email and give a window of at least a week to share feedback on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Please clap for him again. It's been a great Thank you so much, Paul. You know, there are times when, as a manager, you're very excited about what you're delivering. I have unlanding tears. You can't see them, but I'm very happy. Thank you, Paul, and the entire Creek team for a great job. I also have unlanding tears on something else. As I was listening to the comments and the additions, there are things that we long to see as Creek beyond, just one project or program, especially seeing the great need of bridging the gap between technology research and development. Researchers such as ourselves, what we produce, and the financial institutions, and that is the ESG. I think for over 6 years I've been wondering, and so it's good news what you said. I'm so happy to hear that. We have tried to talk to banks. We had some opportunities to discuss with Bank of Uganda, asking when is that day coming when the metrics for regulation is going to include clean energy components. When is that time coming when it is, let's say, almost compulsory? It's a requirement for performance, because once we have that in the metrics, the authorities that are monitoring the financial institutions, whatever effort we are doing on our end will be met with acceptance. We'll be able to discuss, such a blueprint with strong motivation from the financial institutions. So when you mentioned that, I was so excited. There was a time, I was just hearing as rumors, it's being discussed, there are trainings going on, but it's not yet finalized. And Bank of Uganda said, yeah, maybe it will happen in 2 to 3 years. Right now, it's not really yet a requirement. So I want to confirm that that is so. What you said, this, as we are speaking right now, that this is a requirement, say already in this financial or earlier, for all the banks, that they are implementing ESG, and that helps us a lot as the Powerful Food Program. It helps us also across the other projects. So again, confirming, I think I'll speak to you then after the meeting, like, is this the case? If I go now to Centenary Bank, can I go with this confidence?
So they have,
please give her a mic. Please give her a mic.
So they were given a roadmap because they knew not everybody was at the same place. That started last year, 3 years. So by next year, right now everybody is in preparation. They are training, they are looking at their governance structures to the point that they will be expected to have ESG in their board meetings and committees. So by next year, end of next year, they should really be all aligned. So it's a journey, it's a roadmap, but it's happening. So they will not be like they don't know what's going on. Sorry, reporting maybe
Wow, excellent. Let's clap for that. If you're not interested, we see it in the blueprint and the next conversation, but this is a huge milestone. Thank you so much for that update, and a bold one. The second comment, I'm just giving comments, Paul, not really asking questions. I'm just emphasizing some key things that we've been looking forward to see, that we know are accelerators or catalysts. That's one of them, the ESG. The other is knowledge management, and Fred spoke to that. But I hope you've seen it in the blueprint that KM is all over the place. The structural dashboards to accelerate access to information, to track that there's actual impact. If you look at the GC part, we want to see that there is movement. The farmers are actually accessing money, not in theory. We are able to report that. So to that question that was on KM, yes, Fred, as CRIC has always stood for KM, within this program, CRIC is also tasked with facilitating the development of the relevant KM strategies. So the KM strategies will link to these interventions as well. And then the other comment is on, yes, we already have opportunities. I think, was it Mark who mentioned this? We have opportunities, and Paul also mentioned, we have entry points with some of the initiatives. UECCC, we have Uganda Development Bank with that knowledge structural assets, the RISE platform, that we can already start linking in terms of information and solutions. And they've said they are ready to start onboarding, and we'll have other conversations, so we shall be making those connections. And then the tenfold growth strategy is a major informer of this blueprint. We'll look more deeply into it and other strategies and programs that are in the country. Lastly, is on communication. I liked what was coming out of someone who mentioned, I'm not a Uganda, but she said, I think for the communicationists in the room, you should be picking those nice slogans as we promote what we are doing. We need strong communication tied to the knowledge we are generating. So Anyoya in that sentence of faith is being answered through the blueprint, but it can be a messaging line. And then I thought of it also in Luo. Not everyone is in Uganda. What would it be? It should be, let me use Acholi. I speak many Luo languages. Anga abati kichelewa. Is that correct?
Yes.
Anga abati kichelewa. So it's I have some media and what, is that making sense? Let's pick out some of the lines that will push our agenda forward and promote what we are doing. On knowledge management, sorry, I missed out something. You may realize now, oh, there are so many platforms from all the contributors. How are we going to get all these? Can we have one that everybody is running to? There's technology in knowledge management to link existing platforms while building new ones. So there's no contradiction. And in our knowledge management strategy development, that will be captured, things like knowledge graphs and so on. So whatever is going on with UDB, other platforms, NREP has systems, Nogamo, I'm aware that you also have some systems, and whatever else we have as CRIC, there will be no contradiction. We can do interlinkages seamlessly, and information access will be prepared. Yeah, thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Any last issues?
much Creek, Paul, and all the participants in here that have made input into this desk review, to the proposed blueprint for RA Nexus intervention. My only comment, it's basically, you know, when I had us speak, just make our inputs and submission, I just felt that the uniqueness of the Nexus approach, the strength of it, the potential of it was a little bit downplayed. Not that it wasn't there, a little bit. So it would be nice that as we get out with this innovation, let's intentionally, from the word go, make sure that our assessment, our recommendations, our drafting carries that Nexus approach, so that we do not end up designing this and looking at support to agriculture. It's looking at what we can do around the energy. We want this to speak as one, because we've been doing this, but now we are saying, how do we push the Nexus ahead? So I just thought I should make that comment, but it is something great that I'm looking forward to us picking this up and say, if you're speaking to the policy guys, you're speaking to the people sending in finances here, our communication, our message already puts the Nexus in front and not as separate entities. Thank you.
Thank you, Harriet. Yes, it's quite easy to Nexus. And yes, it's also highlighted in yesterday's webinar that was hosted by Equitable. All the existing policies, either it is agriculture or it is energy. So it's either or, but never both. So that is well noted, and we shall ensure it is going to be reflected in the blueprint. At this juncture, as promised, we shall follow up with these documents for you to give any detailed comments that you wish to, for us not to miss out, and also to share in your networks with any further comments. But at this juncture, I would like to invite a representative from the Ministry of Energy to give us some closing remarks. Then we can have a photo session. I hope the team has it for us where to go. After that, we can.
Sorry, not a closing remark, it's a request. It's a request. We're in a process of designing a policy dialogue around this space that we want to host as SNV. Therefore, I'd love to speak to some of you in here to get insights, to try and get you contributing from the word go of if we are to host this dialogue. What should it look like? Whom should we be talking to? What are those policies? Where are they at? To come up with that concept. So I'll Pelam, APSA, NREP, I'll be whispering to you. Please don't go away. Let's have a chat. Thanks.
Thank you. Esther, you're most welcome.
I think I'll talk from here since you don't have a platform. Managing Director Craig, Dr. Susan Apo, representatives from SNV and Power for Food, representatives from the private sector, officials from government, MDS, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is an honor to deliver the closing remarks for the kick-off workshop for the RA Pure Investment Blueprint. On behalf of the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development, we appreciate CRIG and SNV for organizing this workshop. Over the last few hours, we have witnessed a deep dive into the methodology that CRIG intends to use to develop this blueprint. We have heard about the gaps, the data requirements, and the need for stakeholder validated workshop and a roadmap. The Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development has a clear mandate to ensure energy is available, accessible, affordable, and sustainable to drive Uganda's industrialization and transformation. For a long time, it has rightly been so, increasing our generation and extending the grid to rural areas. However, ladies and gentlemen, access to energy does not guarantee prosperity. It is what that energy is used for that could potentially create wealth. And this is where production of energy aligns, where pure aspects will align especially with the ministry's objectives. So as you develop this blueprint, we encourage you to use these tools to advance some of our objectives as ministry. One would like to see the productive utilization beyond consumption. We want to ensure that energy is not just measured by kilowatt hours, but by jobs that is created within the energy sector and by the value that energy adds to products. We hope that this blueprint will guide on how to turn rural households into production. While you develop this blueprint, we encourage you to consider private sector mobilization. The Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development alone cannot finance all productive use of renewable energy strategies. We rely on financial institutions and private sectors for this. So the blueprint should also focus on actionable strategies for capital mobilization to unlock investments in this sector. And as we move from the kickoff phase to the actual development, we encourage you to maintain the momentum that we have created today. We have all witnessed how very interactive the session has been, with various feedbacks from our respective stakeholders. So we encourage CRIC to maintain that momentum as you develop the blueprint. Please engage all relevant stakeholders and ensure that the final blueprint becomes a roadmap for scaling up investments in productive use of renewable energy and regeneration agriculture. I thank all the stakeholders for your active participation. The ministry remains committed to supporting initiatives to drive productive use of renewable energy for sustainable development. With these remarks, I wish you a safe journey back to your respective destinations. I say this for God and my country.
Thank you very much for those resounding closing remarks. As mentioned, we shall ensure to engage all stakeholders, relevant stakeholders, to ensure that this is a stakeholders validated blueprint, guiding document that can also help contribute to some of the ministry's objectives. Thank you. Media, I think you're going to have the last say before people disperse for lunch. I don't know, have you, where we can meet for a photo?
Yes.
Maybe you can communicate on the lunch. So we have coupons here. As you walk out, I believe you can pick a coupon to go to the restaurant. Thank you. So let's move just outside to have our photos. Just move outside and have a photo.
Go play.